The ship was small, that was the first thing they noticed, while other species arrived in massive warships that blocked out the stars. The human vessel was barely larger than a transport shuttle. It docked at the far end of the station, away from the golden platforms reserved for honored guests. No one had prepared a welcome for them. No one had expected them to actually come. Marcus Cole stepped off the ship alone. He was not a tall man. He was not broad or powerful looking. He walked with a slight limp, and his dark hair was cut short in the simple military style of Earth. His face showed no emotion as he looked around the docking bay. Behind him, two more humans followed. Elena Vance, a diplomat with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, and Ambassador Derek Shaw, an older man who had spent 3 years fighting for this invitation. But it was Marcus that everyone stared at. His armor was wrong. That was clear to anyone who looked at it. The chest plate had a long crack running from shoulder to hip. Burn marks covered the left arm like black flowers. The right leg piece was dented so deeply that it must have pressed against the bone beneath. The helmet, which he carried under one arm, had a hole near the temple where something had punched through. This armor had seen war, real war, and it had never been repaired. Elena walked beside Marcus as they entered the main corridor of the station. She kept her voice low. "They're already laughing at us." "Let them," Marcus said. "This is humanity's first warrior summit. First impressions matter. They'll get their impression." The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest structure on the station. It could hold 10,000 beings from across the galaxy. Today, it held the greatest warriors from 37 spacefaring species, along with their attendants, advisors, and admirers. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were lined with screens showing the flags and symbols of every species present. When Marcus entered, the noise died for just a moment, then it came back twice as loud. Warriors from a dozen worlds turned to look at the human. Some were giants standing 3 m tall with skin like stone. Others were fast and thin with too many joints in their limbs. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no faces at all, just smooth plates where eyes should be. All of them wore their finest armor, gold and silver and metals that had no name in human language, gems that glowed with inner light, weapons that could cut through starship hulls. They stood surrounded by servants who polished every surface until it shined like a mirror. Marcus stood in his broken armor and looked back at them. A group of warriors near the entrance began to laugh. They were from the Dominion, a species that had conquered 40 worlds before humanity had learned to make fire. Their leader was a massive creature named Lord Ciarath with 4 arms and a face full of teeth. He pointed at Marcus with one clawed finger. "Look," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "The dirt species has sent their garbage to represent them." More laughter. Elena's hands curled into fists at her sides. Marcus said nothing. He walked past them toward the human section, a small area near the back of the hall with only 3 seats. Ambassador Shaw was already sweating. "Perhaps we should explain that the armor has ceremonial significance," he whispered. "A symbol of battles won. They might understand that." "No," Marcus said. He sat down in his chair. The metal creaked under the weight of his damaged armor. "They wouldn't." The opening ceremony began an hour later. Each Species presented their warrior with great fanfare. Screens showed their victories. Speakers announced their kills, their conquests, their glory, the dominion. Warrior had burned 3 planets. The stone giants had crushed a rebellion of 1 billion souls. The fast ones had assassinated an entire royal bloodline. In a single night, when it was humanity's turn, the screen showed only a few words: Marcus Cole, defender of Outpost Theta 7, sole survivor, no kill count, no conquered worlds, no glory. Just survival. Lord Ciarath laughed. Again, they celebrate not dying, he said. To his companions, how precious, like a child proud of not falling down. The other warriors joined in the mockery. Even species that were enemies with each other found common ground in looking down at the human. Alina leaned toward Marcus. Say something. Defend yourself. Defend Earth. Marcus watched the screens change to the next species. His eyes were distant, seeing something far away. Something old. I defended Earth for 47 days, he said quietly, with 30 soldiers. Against 10,000 enemies, I watched them die one by one. I held some of them as they went. When the rescue ships finally came, I was the only one still breathing. Alina was silent. These warriors, Marcus continued, they count their kills. They measure victory in bodies and burned worlds. They have never stood in a trench and watched everyone they love die around them. They have never kept fighting when there was no hope, no help, no reason to continue. He turned to look at her. His eyes were calm, empty in a way that made her skin cold. Tomorrow there will be demonstrations. Each warrior will show their skill. He paused. I requested to go first. Why? Because they need to understand something about humans. Marcus looked out at the grand hall, at the laughing warriors, at the golden armor and the shining weapons. We are not here to impress them. We are not here to match their conquests or their cruelty. Then why are we here? Marcus almost smiled. It was not a pleasant expression to show them what they should fear. The feast continued around them. Warriors drank and boasted and compared their victories. Lord Ciarath walked past the human section and accidentally knocked a drink onto Marcus' already damaged armor. The liquid ran down the cracked chest plate like tears. Apologies, Krath said with a grin full of teeth. Marcus wiped the liquid away with one hand. He did not stand. He did not react. Tomorrow, he said simply. Krath laughed and walked away. Alina watched him go. You're planning something? Yes, something dangerous. Marcus looked down at his broken armor, at the scars that ran across its surface. Each one was a memory. Each one was a name for them, he said. Not for me. Hall continued its celebration late into the night, and in the small human section, Marcus Cole sat in silence and waited for morning. The night passed slowly in the station, while other warriors slept in luxury quarters with servants attending to their needs. Marcus sat alone in the small human room. He did not sleep. He rarely did anymore. Alina found him at dawn, still sitting in the same chair, staring at the wall. Did you rest at all? She asked. I rested enough at Theta 7, he said. 47 days of watching, waiting, counting the dead. Sleep came in minutes, never hours. I got used to it. She sat down across from him. In the low light, she could see more details of his armor. The crack in the chest plate was deeper than she had thought. Something had hit him hard enough to nearly cut him in half, and yet here he was, Tell me about that place, she said. The outpost. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke in a flat voice like he was reading from a report. Theta 7 was a mining colony, 300 civilians, 30 soldiers to protect them. We were not important. The enemy knew that. They wanted to test us to see how humans would break. What happened? They came in waves, first 100, then 500, then thousands. They had better weapons, better ships, more soldiers than we had. Bullets. He paused. General Victor Drake was our commander. Good man, brave man. He died on day 12, leading a charge to buy time for the civilians to reach the bunkers. Elena listened in silence. By day 20, we had lost half our soldiers. By day 30, I could count the survivors on one hand. By day 40, it was just me and a young private named Tommy. He was 19 years old. He talked about his mother back on Earth, about the garden she kept, about the flowers she grew. Marcus looked down at his hands. He died on day 43. I held him for an hour before I could make myself let go, and you kept fighting. What else was there to do? Marcus shrugged. Dying was easy. The enemy offered it to me many times. All I had to do was stop. But every time I thought about giving up, I thought about Tommy's mother, about her garden, about how someone had to tell her what happened to her son. The door opened. Ambassador Shaw entered with a tablet in his hands. His face was pale. The morning broadcast, he said. You should see this. He played the video. A news program from one of the larger species was discussing the Warrior Summit. The host, a creature with 6 eyes, was laughing as footage of Marcus played on the screen. The humans have sent a broken soldier in broken armor, the host said. Perhaps they could not afford new equipment, or perhaps this is truly the best they have. Either way, it is clear that humanity is not ready for the galactic stage. The footage showed Lord Ciarath pouring his drink on Marcus. The audience laughed. This should be amusing, the host continued. The human has requested to demonstrate first. Today, I expect it will be the shortest demonstration in Summit history. Shaw turned off the tablet. Every species in the coalition is watching. This is a disaster for humanity's reputation. Good, Marcus said. Good. How is this good? Marcus stood up slowly. His armor creaked and groaned with the movement. The more they underestimate us, the better. The combat demonstration arena was a sphere nearly a kilometer across. It floated in zero gravity, surrounded by observation platforms where thousands of spectators could watch. The inside could be configured to simulate any environment, any battle, any war. Marcus stood at the entrance while alien warriors gathered on the platforms above. They were not hiding their amusement. Some had brought food and drinks, treating this like entertainment. Lord Ciarath sat in the front row. His forearms were crossed over his massive chest. I hope the human survives at least a few minutes, he said loudly. I would hate to miss my breakfast waiting for his demonstration. More laughter. Elena stood beside Marcus at the entrance. You don't have to do this. We can withdraw. Say you're sick. Say there was an emergency on Earth. I have to do this, Marcus said. Not for me, for everyone who died at Theta 7, for every human who has ever been called weak or small or worthless by these species, for every colony that exists at their mercy, because they think we are not a threat. What are you going to do? Marcus reached up and touched the hole in his helmet. the one near his temple, a plasma bolt. Did this. He said it burned through the metal and touched my skull, melted part of it. I was blind for 6 days. I kept fighting anyway, along the Pied Alina. Stared at him. The doctors said I should have died. They said the pain alone should have stopped my heart, but I had a promise to keep. Tommy's mother deserved to know what happened to her son. An official approached them, a thin creature with too many legs, human warrior. The arena is ready. Standard demonstration rules apply. You will face a simulated combat scenario based on your species' capabilities. Difficulty will increase until you are eliminated. Your performance will be measured by survival time and enemies destroyed. Marcus nodded. Then he said, I want to request a modification. The official paused. A modification? I don't want simulated enemies. I want live combat drones. Maximum lethality settings. The arena fell silent. Lord Ciarath leaned forward. The amusement had faded from his face, replaced by something like interest. That is highly unusual, the official said. No warrior has ever requested actual danger in a demonstration. Humans don't demonstrate with toys. Marcus said, if you want to see what we can do, show me something real. Whispers spread through the observation platforms. Some warriors laughed nervously, others exchanged glances. He wants to die with honor, someone said. Better than embarrassment. Typical human stupidity, another agreed. Official looked uncertain. I will need to consult with the council. Consult quickly, Marcus said. I'm ready now. 10 minutes later, the approval came. The council had agreed. They wanted to see what the human would do. Marcus walked into the arena, the entrance sealed behind him. Above, thousands of aliens watched through the transparent walls. Cameras broadcast his image across the galaxy. Alina stood at the observation window. Her hands were pressed against the glass. Marcus looked up at the crowd, at Lord Ciarath in the front row, at all the warriors who had laughed at him. Then he reached for the first seal on his armor. What is he doing? Someone asked. Marcus released the seal, then another, piece by piece. He began to remove his armor. The human has gone mad, Lord Ciarath said. He's removing his only protection. Marcus let the chest plate fall. It hit the floor with a heavy clang, and the hall fell quiet beneath the armor. Marcus Cole was not the soft, weak creature they had expected. His body was a landscape of violence, scars covered every inch of visible skin, burns that had healed into twisted patterns, blade wounds that had carved channels through muscle, chemical damage that had eaten away flesh down to the bone and healed over in rough patches. But there was more things that should not be possible. A scar that ran completely across his throat. He should not have survived that. A section of his side where the skin was a different color, replacement tissue. He had lost organs and grown new ones. His left arm moved strangely because 3 of the bones had been shattered and rebuilt with metal. Marcus stood in the arena, stripped of his armor, showing them what 47 days of hell had done to human body, and showing them that he was still alive. Lord Krath was no longer laughing. No one was laughing. You want to know what humans are? Marcus said. His voice echoed through the silent arena. Watch. The combat drones activated, dozens of them, then hundreds, and Marcus Cole began to fight. The first drone came at him fast. It was a small sphere with blades that spun so quickly they blurred into silver. Circles, most warriors used shields and heavy armor against these machines. Marcus had neither. He moved, not fast, like the thin aliens with too many joints, not powerful like the stone giants. He moved like water finding its path, like a predator that had hunted so long it no longer needed to think. Drone passed through the space where he had been. Marcus grabbed it with his bare hand as it went by. The blades cut his palm to the bone. He did not flinch. He used the drone's own momentum to slam it into the floor. It shattered into pieces. Blood dripped from his hand. He did not look at it. The next 5 drones came together. They had learned. They attacked in formation. Marcus picked up a piece of the broken drone, a sharp metal fragment, jagged and wrong. He threw it without looking. It hit one drone and sent it spinning into another. Both exploded. The remaining 3 reached him. One sliced across his back. Another cut his leg. The third aimed for his throat. He caught the third one. The blades cut into his fingers. He crushed it anyway. On the observation platform, Elena watched with her hand over her mouth. She had seen soldiers fight before. She had seen battles in training videos, but she had never seen anything like this. Marcus was not fighting like a man who wanted to win. He was fighting like a man who had forgotten how to stop. Admiral Catherine West watched from Earth through a secure feed. She was the head of humanity's military council. She had sent Marcus to this summit against the advice of her generals. They said he was broken. One of her aides whispered. They said Theta 7 had destroyed him. No, we said quietly. Theta 7 showed us what he truly was. In the arena, Marcus had destroyed 15 drones. His body was covered in cuts. Blood ran down his arms and legs and dripped onto the floor. The automatic medical systems were flashing warnings. His heart rate was too high. His blood loss was too severe. Any normal being would have collapsed by now. Marcus kept fighting. The arena's computer noticed that the difficulty was too low. It had expected the human to fall within the first minute. Instead, he was adapting, learning, getting faster. The computer increased the difficulty. 20 more drones entered the arena, then 30, then 50. Lord C.R. Rath stood up from his seat. His 4 hands gripped the railing. He was no longer watching with amusement or curiosity. Something else was in his eyes now. Something that might have been fear. How is he still standing? Someone asked. Human physiology, an alien doctor answered. He was reading data from the arena's medical scanners. They do not process pain same way we do. Their bodies release chemicals that allow them to ignore damage, and their healing, it is already beginning. The smaller cuts are closing. That is not possible. I am seeing it happen. Marcus caught a drone and tore it apart with his hands. Metal cut his palms. He used the pieces as weapons against the next wave. He was building a rhythm, a pattern. He had done this before. For 47 days he had done nothing but this, back on Earth in a small colony near the frontier. Young soldier named Thomas Reed watched the broadcast on a public screen. He was 17 years old. He had joined the military because he wanted to be like the heroes in the stories. Now he was watching a real hero. But Marcus did not look like the heroes in the stories. He was not golden or shining. He was not clean and perfect. He was covered in blood and scars and damage that would have killed anyone else, and he would not stop. "Why won't he fall, Thomas?" whispered an older soldier beside him. A woman with gray hair and tired eyes answered, "Because humans don't know how to fall, we just know how to keep getting up." In the arena, the computer increased the difficulty again. The drones were faster now, smarter. They attacked in complex patterns designed to trap and destroy. Marcus was hit. Blade caught his shoulder and went deep. Another sliced across his chest. A third cut his face from forehead to chin, missing his eye by centimeters. He grabbed that drone and smashed it against the floor until it stopped moving. The medical warnings were screaming now: massive blood loss, multiple organ damage, shock imminent, death likely within minutes. Marcus kept fighting. Elena turned to the official beside her. "Stop this, he's going to die." The official looked uncomfortable. He requested maximum lethality. "We cannot intervene unless he surrenders or becomes unconscious." "He won't surrender, he doesn't know how." "Then we cannot stop the demonstration." Elena looked back at the arena. Marcus was surrounded now. Dozens of drones circled him like sharks around bleeding prey. His movements were slower, his reactions were delayed. He was dying, but he was still fighting. Lord Krath watched in silence. He had conquered worlds. He had killed millions. He had never been afraid of anything in his long life. But watching this human, this small creature from a small planet, refuse to die, no matter how much damage he took, something cold settled in his chest. This was not courage. This was not skill. This was something else entirely. This was a warning. Marcus fell to one knee. A drone had cut the tendon in his leg. He could not stand properly anymore. The drones sensed weakness. They closed in for the kill. Marcus grabbed two of them, one in each hand. The blades cut his fingers to the bone. He smashed them together and used the explosion to destroy three more. He crawled now, unable to walk, still fighting. The arena's computer was confused. No being had ever lasted this long against maximum difficulty. It had run out of standard responses. It began loading additional drones from reserve storage. 100 drones entered the arena, then 200, then 500. Marcus was buried in metal and blades. The observation platforms lost sight of him behind the swarm. For a long moment, there was only the sound of drones and destruction. Then impossibly a hand reached up from the pile, a bloody, broken hand. It grabbed a drone and crushed it. Marcus Cole pulled himself out of the swarm. He was missing pieces. Now parts of his skin had been stripped away. One eye was swollen shut. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. He got back to his feet. The arena had been designed to break anyone, any species, any warrior. It was meant to find the limit of any being and push past it. It had not found Marcus Cole's limit. 3 hours. That was how long he lasted. 3 hours of constant combat against odds that would have killed any other warrior in minutes. When he finally fell, it was not because he had given up. It was because his body simply could not move anymore. His muscles had been cut too many times. His blood loss was too severe. His heart was beating, but his legs would not respond. Even then, lying in a pool of his own blood, surrounded by the wreckage of nearly 1,000 drones, Marcus Cole tried to crawl toward the remaining enemies. The medical teams rushed into the arena. They had to pry his hands open. His Fingers had locked around a piece of metal ready to use as a weapon. Even unconscious, some part of him was still fighting on the observation platform. No one spoke. Lord Ciarath looked down at the broken human being carried out of the arena, at the devastation he had caused, at the impossible thing he had witnessed. He spoke one word in the universal tongue, a word his species reserved for only the most terrifying enemies, enemies that had haunted their legends for thousands of years. Demon. The medical bay was not designed for humans. The beds were too large. Machines did not understand human biology. The doctors had never treated a human patient before. They did not need to do much. By the time they got Marcus to the medical bay, his body had already begun healing itself. Dr. Michael Hayes, the human physician who had traveled with the delegation, stood beside the alien doctors and watched their faces change from confusion to disbelief to something close to horror. His wounds are closing, one alien doctor said. Its voice was high and thin like wind through broken glass. We have not done anything. They are closing on their own. Human regeneration. Hayes explained. We heal quickly. It is how our species survived on Earth. Our planet was trying to kill us from the moment we evolved. We adapted, but the damage, the blood loss alone, humans can lose 40% of their blood and survive. With proper rest and nutrition, we can recover from injuries that would kill most species. Hayes paused. Marcus has lost more than that multiple times, and he is still here. The alien doctors looked at each other. One of them pulled up Marcus' medical scans on a large screen. These readings are impossible, it said. His organs have been damaged and rebuilt multiple times. His bones have fractures that healed incorrectly and then were broken again and healed correctly. His brain shows signs of trauma that should have left him unable to function. He functions fine, Hayes said. How does any creature survive this? Hayes looked at Marcus lying on the bed. His patient's eyes were closed. His breathing was steady. He looked almost peaceful. Humans evolved as persistence predators, Hayes said. We did not have claws or fangs or armor. We could not run fast or fly or breathe underwater. But we had one advantage. We did not stop. We would chase our prey for days, weeks, until it collapsed from exhaustion, until it could not run anymore, and then we would eat it. Alien doctors were silent. That is what we are, Hayes continued. We are the species that does not stop. Pain does not stop us. Injury does not stop us. Fear does not stop us. We just keep going until the job is done or we are dead. He looked at the scans on the screen, at the map of violence that covered Marcus' body, and sometimes he added quietly, even death does not stop us right away. Word spread through the station quickly. By the time Marcus woke up, every species in the coalition had seen the footage of his demonstration. Every military leader had requested copies. Every scientist had begun studying human biology with new interest and new fear. Marcus opened his eyes. The ceiling above him was too high and the wrong color. For a moment he did not know where he was. For a moment he was back at Theta 7, waking up in a bunker surrounded by bodies. Then Alina's face appeared above him. You're awake, she said. How do you feel? Hungry, Marcus said. His voice was rough. How long was I out? 6 hours. Marcus sat up. The movement pulled at Fresh scars, but he ignored the pain. He had felt worse. He always felt worse. The doctors say you should rest for at least a week. Alina said, your body needs time to heal. My body will heal while I work. Marcus swung his legs off the bed. His muscles screamed in protest. He stood up. Anyway, what is happening at the summit? Alina hesitated. You made an impression, good or bad, I am not sure. Yet, the closing ceremony was held that evening. Marcus attended wearing simple clothes instead of his broken armor. The armor had been collected from the arena floor and returned to him, but he did not put it on. He did not need it anymore. The hall was different now. When Marcus entered, no one laughed. No one pointed. No one made jokes about the human in broken armor. Instead, they watched him with careful eyes, the way prey watches a predator. It does not understand. Lord Ciarath was waiting near the human section. When Marcus approached, the massive alien stepped into his path. Alina tensed. Ambassador Shaw looked ready to faint. Krath looked down at Marcus. The human barely reached the alien's chest. He was smaller in every way, weaker in every way that could be measured, but Krara had seen what could not be measured. Slowly the Dominion warrior raised all four of his arms and crossed them over his chest. Then he bowed his head until his face was level with Marcus. In the Dominion culture, this gesture was reserved for only two types of beings, gods and enemies so dangerous they might as well be gods. Human, Krath said, I was wrong about your species. Marcus met his eyes. Yes, you were. You are not weak. You are not garbage. Krath straightened up. You are something else entirely. Something my people have no word for. We have a word for it, Marcus said. We call it human. The closing ceremony proceeded in silence. No species boasted about their victories. No one compared kill counts or conquered worlds. They sat and watched and thought about what they had witnessed. When the Coalition Council called for votes on humanity's status, the result was unanimous. Full military partnership, access to all Coalition resources, a seat at every strategic table. It was not given out of admiration or respect. It was given out of fear. After the ceremony, Alina found Marcus standing alone at a viewport, looking out at the stars. You did it, she said. Humanity is a full partner. Now we have a future in this coalition. Yes, you should be proud. Marcus did not answer for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was distant. I did not do this for pride. I did not do this for humanity's future. Then why? Marcus touched the viewport. Somewhere out there, past millions of stars, was Earth, and on Earth was a small garden with flowers that a mother had planted for a son who would never come home. I made a promise, he said, to a young man named Tommy. I promised him that I would survive, that I would go home, that I would tell his mother what happened to him. Did you tell her? Yes, I sat with her for 3 days. I told her everything, how brave he was, how he never gave up, how he talked about her garden even at the end. Marcus paused. She asked me why I survived when her son did not. I had no answer. Alina was quiet. Every scar on my body is a failure, Marcus continued. Every wound is someone I could not save. That armor, the broken one they mocked, I never repaired it because I do not deserve to forget. I do not deserve clean metal and shining plates. I deserve to carry the damage. That is not failure, Alina said softly. That is love. Marcus turned to Look at her for the first time since she had met him. She saw something human. In his eyes, something soft beneath all. The scars, maybe, he said, maybe it is. They stood together in silence, watching the stars as the warrior summit came to an end and a new era began for humanity, an era built not on conquest or power or glory, an era built on the simple, terrifying truth that humans do not know how to stop. Journey back to Earth took 14 days. Marcus spent most of it alone, sitting in his small cabin, looking at the stars through a tiny window. The broken armor sat in the corner, still damaged, still scarred, still carrying the weight of everything he had lost. Alina checked on him every day. She brought him food and reports and news from home. Humanity was celebrating. The footage of his demonstration had spread across every colony, every station, every ship. Children were drawing pictures of him. Soldiers were saluting his name. Marcus did not watch any of it. On the 8th day, Alina found him writing something on paper, actual paper with a pen. Almost no one used such things anymore. What are you writing? She asked. Names. Marcus said, all of them, everyone who died at Theta 7. I write them every day, so I do not forget. Alina looked at the paper, 30 names written in careful letters. Tommy's name was at the bottom, underlined twice. You carry a heavy burden, she said. It is not a burden, it is a responsibility. Marcus set down the pen. They trusted me to keep them safe. I failed. The least I can do is remember them. You did not fail. You survived. You kept fighting for 47 days against impossible odds. No one could have done more. No one could have done more. Marcus shook his head. Surviving is not success. Surviving is just not dying. It is not the same thing. The ship arrived at Earth on a cold morning. Snow was falling over the military base where Marcus had begun his career 15 years ago. A crowd had gathered to welcome the delegation home. Generals and politicians and reporters all waited to shake his hand. Marcus ignored them. He walked past the crowd, past the cameras, past the shouting reporters. He walked until he reached a small transport vehicle. He got inside and gave the driver an address. Alina followed him. She did not try to stop him. The transport took them to a small town 300 km from the base. It was an old town full of old houses, surrounded by fields that had been farmed for generations, the kind of place that time had forgotten. Marcus stopped at a house on the edge of town. It was small and white with a garden. The front, even in winter, even covered in snow, the garden was beautiful. Someone had planted flowers that bloomed. In the cold, a woman came to the door. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, then she opened her arms. Marcus walked into her embrace and held her for a long time. Alina stayed by the transport and watched. She understood. Now this was Tommy's mother. This was the garden Tommy had talked about as he died. This was the promise Marcus had made. When Marcus finally stepped back, the woman was crying, but she was smiling too. You came back, she said. You always come back. I made a promise. You kept it again and again, every year. You come here, every year you tell me about my son. She wiped her eyes. Whole galaxy watched you fight. My neighbors told me you were a hero. Marcus shook his head. I am not a hero. Your son was the hero. He held the line. When I could not, he gave his life so others could survive. I am just the one who lived to tell his story, the woman took his hand. Come inside. I made soup. Tommy always loved my soup, do you remember? He talked about it all the time. I remember, Marcus said he talked about it every day, even at the end they went inside. Elena followed after a moment, unsure if she belonged but unwilling to leave Marcus alone. House was warm and full of photographs. Tommy's face looked down from every wall. Tommy as a baby, Tommy as a child, Tommy in his military uniform, young and proud and full of hope. Marcus looked at each photograph with careful attention. He had done this before many times, but each time he looked like he was seeing them for the first time. He would be so proud of you, Tommy's mother said as she served the soup. He always admired you. He said you were the strongest person he had ever met. He was wrong, Marcus said. He was the strong one. I just refused to die. They ate in silence. Outside, the snow continued to fall. In the garden, the winter flowers swayed in the cold wind. After the meal, Marcus stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the garden for a long time. I have to go back, he said finally. The coalition will want me for meetings, discussions, strategy sessions. They are afraid of humanity now. They will want to understand us. Will you come back? Tommy's mother asked. Next year, every year, Marcus said, until I cannot walk anymore, and then I will crawl. Elena felt tears on her own cheeks. She did not wipe them away. Marcus turned to face them. In the soft light of the kitchen, surrounded by photographs of a young man who had died in his arms, he looked almost peaceful. This is why I fight, he said. Not for glory, not for power, not for humanity's place in the galaxy. He looked at Tommy's mother. I fight so that somewhere in some small house, mothers can plant gardens and remember their sons. He walked to the door. Elena followed. At the entrance, Marcus stopped and turned back one last time. Thank you, he said to Tommy's mother, for raising a good man, for teaching him to be brave, for giving him something worth fighting for. She smiled through her tears. Thank you for bringing him home, even if it was just in stories. Marcus nodded. Then he walked out into the snow. Transport took them back to the military base. The crowds had left, but the generals were still waiting. They had questions, demands, plans for humanity's new role in the galaxy. Marcus answered their questions. He attended their meetings. He shook their hands and accepted their medals, but every night, alone in his quarters, he took out a piece of paper and wrote 30 names in careful letters. And every year, in a small town covered in snow, he kept his promise to a young man who had died believing in him. On a dozen alien worlds, military commanders updated their strategic files. Under the section marked Humanity, they added new recommendations, new warnings, new fears. Never engage humans in prolonged conflict. They do not stop. Never harm their families. They will hunt you forever. Never underestimate their will. They fight for things you cannot understand. And in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Coalition, the seat reserved for humanity's warrior stood empty most days. Marcus Cole rarely attended the summits anymore. He was too busy visiting small houses with gardens, too busy keeping promises, too busy remembering the dead. But no one sat in his seat when he was gone. No one would dare. The mockery had ended that day in the arena, when a broken man in broken armor had shown them what humans truly were. Not conquerors, not warriors, not heroes, survivors. People who kept going when there was no hope, people who fought for love instead of glory, people who carried their scars as reminders instead of hiding them as shame. And somewhere in the galaxy, in military briefings and strategy sessions, the word spread: humans were not the strongest species, they were not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they were the most dangerous because they did not know how to stop, and they never, ever forgot.